We're back on MorningLine. Thanks for joining us this morning. Among other things, we're going to be monitoring and be joined by Leland at the end of the program to talk about the very latest on this severe weather situation we're facing this morning and throughout the day. But before that, we are in the middle of a discussion on human trafficking and some new legislation here in the state of Tennessee to address this serious problem. Representative London Lamar is joining us from Memphis. It's good to have her on. She's been involved with two pieces of legislation, which, by the way, they've already passed, right? Has the governor signed them yet?
They have not been signed yet. We are still waiting, and I think it's just a process, and he does many of them all at one time. So, but my human trafficking bill for the self-defense clause, which is House Bill 17, has been passed in the House and the Senate, and I want to take this moment to thank Senator Janice Bowling, who is a Republican, for partnering with me on this. You know, a lot of times you hear about the divisiveness of what goes on in the legislature, Democrat versus Republican, but sometimes we can come together on issues that matter to the public. And I was able to champion this particular issue and come together across party lines. And don't get me wrong, this bill supports everybody. If you don't matter if you're black, white, male, female, gay, straight, whatever you are, if you are a victim of human trafficking, this bill is put in place to support you. And so I thought about the totality of all Tennesseans when I thought about pushing this bill, and I wanted to show there was support both on the Democrat and Republican side for this particular issue.
Yeah, for sure, a bipartisan issue. Everyone wants to see it addressed. If you will then now about the other bill with regard to teachers having human trafficking training and why you think something like that is needed.
Absolutely. So my other human trafficking bill is House Bill 117, which is a bill that makes teachers go from one time to once every 3 years human trafficking training. And we already have videos established that are being updated by our key human trafficking organizations in the state. So that material is already provided and available. And so the reason why I feel they must take this training more often is because the game of human trafficking tends to change. You know, on one instance, they get a lot of the victims on social media, and then they manipulate the games to do in person, or finding them at the corner stores, or tracking them on cell phones or the parks, or any which number of ways. There are also many forms of human trafficking. Like I said, they can be going on in the household, with the example I gave earlier about inter-family participation in the sexual coercion of others. When we think about those who potentially may be kidnapped, or teenagers who are homeless, who then fall into the arms of a trafficker who promises that they're going to take care of them, but really they're using them for sex for other individuals. And so when they come to school, you know, teachers are able to, they spend a lot of time with our students, like over 8 hours a day. And so they know their students. And if they see it's something wrong, or they can identify signs that this student may be a victim of human trafficking, we then can come up with a plan to help these students so that we can remove them from their trafficking, get them the support that they need, and making sure we're putting them in a loving environment where they'll be protected, it won't be manipulated.
And the teachers, then, you think, need training for that? I was trying to think, and neither you or I are experts on necessarily spotting or knowing exactly what, but I've done shows on this, and I know because you put these bills together, you have an idea the different kinds of warning signs you might notice. And of course, a teacher spending maybe, 5, 6, 7 hours a day with a student might pick up on it. I'm guessing you're thinking that they need the training to be able to see things like, all right, maybe a change in a student's demeanor and behavior, obviously any signs of physical abuse. There must be other things that are more subtle, because the obvious ones you would think a teacher would be aware of whether they have training or not. Any knucklehead can figure that out if someone's hurt. It's got to be more subtle, the training, what they're learning.
Yeah, there are so many signs that someone is being victimized, but many teachers don't know even the subtle or the even open signs. So a student can say that they got this scar because they hurt, but got hurt playing sports, but really they could be signs of abuse, or the fact that all of a sudden their home situation is not working out, or they're no longer doing their homework, or they come into school tired all the time, or their attitude has changed, they are angry, or they're scared all the time. They seem like something that's wrong with them. They seem traumatized. Their mental and their emotional capacity is unstable. There are a number of ways that you can tell a child has been victimized, but not all teachers are aware of all of those signs. So we just want to help them be aware and then be able to connect with that principal or that authority to help get them the help that they need without making the student feel like they're in trouble or they did something wrong as well. And so we want to make sure that we're showing compassion and grace and support for these victims, especially when they're children. And that is, and children to trust their teachers because they're with them all the time. And so if we can get individuals who spend time with students who they trust to be able to help mitigate and make us more aware of when a child is in a position that they are being a victim of human trafficking, then we can further curb the rate of human trafficking victims in the state and help curb the fact that it's the second highest rising crime in the state. And in order for us to tackle that, we must get all partners and communities involved. And I will say this is just a start. You know, I want to continue to make sure that we are pushing policies that are going to further educate the community on signs of human trafficking so that we can have all hands on deck at protecting victims and making sure that type of heinous crime is not going on in anybody's community.
Yeah, you know what really gets me? I'm in the news biz and I see things up front. Even I am just stunned at how widespread something this is. And it's been hidden for a long time. I mean, you say the second highest crime rate. So, I mean, the odds are you and I both are probably around someone on any given day that is caught up in this and we don't know it. I mean, and that's stunning. And you're like, Nick, that can't be right. I mean, it could be someone you walk past in a grocery store, right? Could be someone somewhere where you work, something like this. And you have no idea that it's this scope. I mean, I'm still stunned at part of the issue too. And I don't know if you can address this because you're talking about the victims of it. But what infuriates me is human trafficking would be a non-issue if there was no market for this. And I'm talking about the scumbags, and that's exactly what they are, that you know, either profit or go about human trafficking.
Absolutely. You know, the cool thing about everything that's going on is the fact we got technology now. And with the implementation of more social media and more use of technology, law enforcement is able to do more research and find out crimes. Like they're able to, you know, set up sting operations through the fact that people are using websites and social media apps to lure or market or sell their victims. So police officers are able to use technology to play the game and making sure that they catch individuals. We now have TV. You know, you are now, what was that show, To Catch a Predator, kind of really started that, like putting it in your face. Look at all of these men on the computer or women, you know, going in these kids' chat rooms, trying to lure them and engage in sexual activity. And now you have social media campaigns that can go from a hashtag to a whole national policy change in the midst of a day. Well, and so now technology has opened the door for us to bring the education and advocacy to the forefront and to your front door.
Yeah, so it needs to be people like us that notice it. But here's the thing, you're right. That program you just referenced is one, and I've watched it, and I'm just amazed by it. It's been out there. Everyone knows about it. We constantly are doing stories on stings. And these guys, and it's guys almost 100% of the time. Don't give me any crap about women also involved in this. That's very rare. It's guys. The guys that go do this, they have to be aware of these programs, and when they get to one of these calls and they show up at a hotel thinking they're going to meet a child and get arrested, I mean, I don't see how they don't think to themselves, this could possibly be a sting. And that just tells you, I think, Representative, how great the drive is for them, that despite their better judgment, they still seek out sex with a child. I mean, that sickness is overwhelming. They know better on so many levels, and I'm not making any excuses for them, but they can't stop.
Absolutely. You know, I cannot fathom what would make someone want to engage in sexual activity with a child.
No.
To me, it's, you know, children are so innocent, and to violate the innocence is just wrong across the board. And so for me, there has to be some more things done to address what is going on in these individuals' head or in their lives that would drive them to violate a child's innocence, to take their innocence away, and to use them commercially for money. You know, I never understand it. I can't even fathom how they even get to the thought process. But what we do know is that there is a sickness and that we have to address it, which is why there's bipartisan support throughout the legislature to heighten the crimes and the penalties on individuals who commit acts of sexual violence against children, which I do want to talk about is one thing that came out of when I was working on this House Bill 17 to create the criminal defense clause, the self-defense clause for our human trafficking victims. I had to work with Republicans in a summer study when my bill wasn't correct. Through our talks and our analysis, we realized that aggravated rape victims and aggravated rape victims of a child do not have a self-defense clause either. So I was so fortunate that Representative Brandon Ogles was able to champion that particular bill that came out of the analysis and the work around this particular bill to also create a self-defense clause for individuals who are victims of aggravated rape or aggravated rape of a child. And so what that is true criminal justice reform to address the fact that these individuals need to be held accountable, and the burden of responsibility must be placed on the perpetrator and not the victim. And right now, we are having to do more to hold perpetrators like that accountable for their sickness and the fact that they want to take advantage of innocent people, especially children.
Listen, we're going to take a quick break on that note, and when we come back, we're going to have a final segment with you to cover a little more ground on this. And I appreciate you joining us, ma'am, from there, so stick around. We'll be right back with more with Representative right after this.